Hello, what's going on YouTube? This is J-Man here. I'm bringing you guys that part 2 that I guys promised you guys, featuring getting better at Yu-Gi-Oh! Part 2 is strategies slash combos. Now, it's been about 5 days since I made any videos, and that is because of a few things. One, I've been doing just rigorous testing with my deck, because I am 100% sure that I am definitely attending YCS Utah. So anybody that sees this video and that is also planning to go to Utah, hit me up in the comments below. I'll try and find me, whatever, during the YCS, but it'll be the first YCS of Utah. But not only that, me and my now ex, kind of broke up, so I've been, trying to move forward, going on some more dates, life things. So combined with dates and Yu-Gi-Oh! Playtesting, I've done like 3 tournaments and all that stuff in the past few days. What I've noticed, and since some of these other events this weekend have concluded, there's been more True Dracos topping, and some events even more so than Pendulums, which is really raising an eye in my case, because again, my deck's worst matchup is in fact the Draco matchup. Now, if I don't know what to expect for Utah, if that is going to carry over, I don't know. But I've been even in my locals, I've encountered a lot more True Draco matchups, which might warrant me to change my deck up just a little bit, because it was kind of built against both Pendulums and True Dracos. But I expected to encounter the Pendulum matchup a lot more. And just in case I do encounter a Draco matchup, it would have, I would have something. But if I'm encountering the Draco matchup a lot more, then that is something that that needs to be addressed. I need to maybe change a few things and steer just a little bit away from Pendulums and more towards my bad matchup, at least in terms of the main deck. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why Pendulums are falling out of favor, but the more Pendulums fall out of favor and lose popularity, the more True Dracos gain popularity, which, again, is a huge problem for this deck. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. At first, I'm going to go and recap some things about Part 1. Part 1, you want to establish a win condition. Your certain win condition when building a deck. Deck building is always number one. You could be a really good player, but if you don't have a proper deck build and whatnot, you're not going to do good. So, and again, I use Wolchhouse as an example because that is the deck that I currently know best. And so, what you want to do, once again, is establish what your win condition is going to be before you even start building your deck. And of course, the win condition is using Firewall to put these and climb the link ladder into this and essentially win the game from there. Not only do you need to establish your win condition, but you also need to build decks, or build your deck with combo cards to successfully pull off these said win conditions. You want your combo, your starters, your extenders. To get there, you want, your interaction cards for your opponent, because you won't always win the dice roll, and even if you do, hand traps are still a thing, and all that good stuff. But since now that you got all that stuff down, well, what's the next step? Well, now you need to work on strategies. Executing said strategy, you need to have, now that your win condition is established, you need to come up with strategies to get you to where you desire to be. And in my case, in order to get to where I need to be, I need to not only have the cards I need to access things like Christia and Gamma Seal if I don't already have them, but I need to also be able to access a Firewall Dragon so I can continue climbing up the link chain to special summon not only those from the hand, but to summon a Tri-Gate Wizard to the field. So in order to do that, you need to come up with set strategies to do so. And the best way to do that is by drawing summoning monsters and having more ways to access more cards and dig through the deck. Things like Skull Dread and Ningirsu. Your main strategy, if you are trying to accomplish such a feat such as this, if you need to access certain things, you need draw power, you need search power. But things like Archwell Christia and Gameciel can't be searched by ordinary means. Gameciel can only be searched by a Kyoto Waterfront, and you may not always have that. You may not have the space to run terraformings. In Archwell Christia, if you don't hard draw it, you have to either draw into it off of these or have it with Brilliant Fusion and whatnot. But more times than not, the Brilliant Fusion is going to get you access to a missing combo piece like a Lee or Venus. So in order to get to your win condition first, you need to establish your pieces first, and these are the easiest ways to do so. There are other tech cards that you could play, such as White Elephant's Gift. I've done that in the past, but there are more simple ways. You know, the easiest way to access said Link monsters would be through monsters that can produce multiple monsters on the board, whether it be through Scapegoat, Venus, or, you know, the recently banned Gofu, which I can no longer use it as an example. But in this scenario, Venus is the simplest way to get to where you need to go. Combo with cards like World Legacy, World Chalice, or Lee the World Chalice Fairy, whichever one floats your boat. Because this access gives you access to the Legacy Cup, which gets you 2 more monsters on the board, and this already equals 4. So with that being said, getting to cards such as Skull Dread and Ningirsu aren't really the biggest problems in the world. And so being able to do things like that and having extenders such as Brilliant Fusion and Exodius to put your Shine Balls back in to continue up the link chain is very, very simple. Now, with that being said, these kind of strategies don't always work for 2 reasons. One, you may not draw these cards. You may not draw them. And 2, you may not win the dice roll. You may not win the dice roll, and your opponent may put disruptions on their side of the field of their own to stop you from disrupting, or to stop you from performing your actions and performing your plays. And since most decks in the competitive scene are relatively known in what their win conditions are, combined with the fact that they also know what the combo pieces are needed to get there, they have certain knowledge on what they can do to stop your plays. And with that being said, this is also this is where deck building comes in, and this is where becoming a better player comes in, because in most rogue decks have only one way to get to where they need to go, and if that certain route gets disrupted, then they hit a roadblock and they can't go anywhere. But this is where strategy comes in, because in order to access your win condition, we shouldn't go about it in a linear fashion. Although some combos are the most optimal in terms of card economy, you may not always have that option, or you do have the option, but you are staring down disruptions, so you have to take another route to get to where you need to go. And so, this is why cards like Brilliant Fusion, Unexpected Die, Soul Charge is just generic, but that's just for anything that negates and destroys. But if it's something like an ABC Buster Dragon that banishes cards, then you're dealing with you're dealing with a different can of worms. If you're dealing with things that banish, such as Buster Dragon, Infernoids, Makaba, etc. But although this can stop Dragon Buster, there is very little to stop things like Makaba and Infernoids, and Invoked Mech Knight is indeed a deck. So what you need to do at this point is not only establish a different strategy, which is what I'm going on about this time, but I might actually use a different deck this time. So, actually, that is a great idea. With that being said, I will go ahead and pull out, where is it? My ABCs, because that is it's just a great prime example. So I do want to show off different decks. I do want to show that this strategy, I want to show, a different take on things. So, that being said, I will show you guys some ABC Buster Dragons. Now, I don't necessarily have the secrets of the Buster Dragon yet. However, I do have the secrets of literally everything else. I have the secret B's, A's, and C's. C, B's, A's, terraformings, all that stuff. And even the enemy controllers, which I have yet to put in this deck. They're still just laying around somewhere. But, I digress. Oh, there's a lot of missing cards. Did have a going second build of ABCs, which is really good. I had enemy controllers at 3, mind control at 3, evenly matched in a few kaijus, which, this deck has a small engine. But anyway, what is the main strategy of this deck? The main strategy of an ABC deck is to establish a Buster Dragon plus a Deco Talker, which is somewhere else. Regardless, your main strategy is your Buster Dragon, because not only is it very, very beefy, but it has the ability to disrupt opponents' plays alongside of trimming himself off to dodge other effects, to give you 3 monsters on the board to not only access more link plays, but to access your rank 4 toolbox. Now, most competitive players know that ABC is their main win condition, and the way to get there is to have all the pieces in play, whether it be through the spell and trap zone, the field, or the graveyard, and Union Hanger is generally the best way to access this. Now, you normally want to start with something such as a gold and silver gadget or a cock-a-doodle-doo, which is it's understood, because those cards offer you one of 2 things. Well, at least the cock-a-doodle-doo does, but they both offer you similar things, being it gets the pieces off the board, because the pieces by themselves don't do anything unless they hit the graveyard. So with that being said, you want to have ways to summon multiple monsters on the board, to send preferably B Buster Dragon, C Crush Wyvern in the graveyard, because C Crush Wyvern can get the last piece from hand to field, and B can search out the last piece. Now, people know this, and they will attempt to disrupt things with things like Ghost Ogring your Union Hanger and such, and or disrupting these guys and stopping them from hitting the graveyard, etc., etc. Now, with that, what do you want to do? Well, you want to have a different route. Now, if your Union Hanger gets hit, then normally the case would be you have no way to access other pieces, because you can only activate 1 Union Hanger per turn. But if you decided to tech or play a card like Pseudo Space, for example, which for some reason is not in my deck. I don't know why it isn't in my deck. It should always be in my deck. Simply for that reason. Considering that Union Hanger you can only activate once per turn, you need alternatives to access other cards. And Pseudo Space would be the perfect alternative. For those of you who don't know, Pseudo Space is a field spell that allows you to banish a field spell from the graveyard, and it gains its effects with a turn. Since this says you can only activate 1 Union Hanger per turn, rather than you can only use the effects of Union Hanger once per turn, the Pseudo Space is an ultimate replacement for it, especially if you have something like a C Crush Wyvern on the field and you're looking to summon another monster. This is how I'm able to bypass things like Cosmic Cyclone when it comes to the Hanger, or them tributing off a spell for a True Draco, or whatever. Once it's dealt with, this was back when set rotation was at 3, but terraforming is still at 3 still. You were terraforming, you would activate pseudo-space banish and Union Hanger, and it becomes a Union Hanger for the turn. And so at this point, you're free to link off either this, link off the C and make, either a Proxy Dragon, an Underclock Taker, or a Cleefort Genius. So then you can still summon another monster from your hand, and you still have your pseudo-space / Union Hanger to equip, and you still have your access to your Buster Dragon, and that's one way to go about it. There are other ways to go about accessing a Buster Dragon. Sometimes you don't want 2 ways to accessing your win condition. You want as many ways to access your win condition as possible. The more, the better. And this is where cards like Enemy Controller and all that stuff come in. Because if by some reason you don't access another way to get a monster on the board, such as Chicken, as in Cock-a-doodle-doo, or Gold and Silver Gadget, there are other ways to do so. Not only that, but there are other ways to do so in the form of cards such as Enemy Controller and cards like Mind Control. These serve multiple purposes. Not only does it take your opponent's monster, but it gives you a second monster to link with. Or in Enemy Controller's case, 9 times out of 10 you would want to tribute off Sea Crush Wyvern, take their monster, so C can trigger, and special summon another piece from the hand, and you now can access your links and still get the pieces you need to the field and searched out and all that good stuff to access your Buster Dragon, which is why I really like cards such as Mind Control and Enemy Controller, because it serves dual purpose of not only making sure that the pieces hit the graveyard, but I can also deal with opponents' threats at the same time. Dual purpose, as I said last video, is always a good thing. You always want dual purpose cards. Now, there are other ways to go about certain things, especially if you're facing down certain threats. And what I mean by this in particular is, let's say my opponent has 2 forms of disruption on the board, one to negate a spell and one that stops about anything. Well, what you want to do at this point is you want to find, first off, you got to establish with your deck which is more important to you, monster effects or resolving your spell cards. And once you find the answer to that, in this case you want to resolve your monster effects. You will tribute over the thing that can do so, and let's say I want to put it here, right in under zone 2 or zone 4. I can also have other ways to access these said things, and be able to get around multiple disruptions in a sense, because once again, kaijus are incredible for offering you this kind of value, but there are other ways to get around certain things depending on what your deck is. For instance, for example, let's say I decided to summon Gold Gadget and use the effect to summon a Sea Crush Wyvern to the field. Now from here, if I want to get rid of the other disruption first before I activate things like Mind Control to take other monsters, Union Hanger to get other pieces, I could, since these 2 are of the same type, I can link these and end up making Akashic Magician to bounce that kaiju and kaiju over the other threat, and trigger C's effect at the same time, summoning a piece, which still gets you access to a decode and whatnot. See, it's all about having options and having multiple ways to not only out threats, but to still access your win condition. It's all about strategy. You want not only multiple ways to access said strategy, you want to pick the best way to get to your strategy if there are known threats, but there are also some things that you need to keep in mind as well, being unknown threats, as in cards in hand, set cards on field, etc. So, if I decide to go first, and it's, let's say, game 2 or game 3, and I know my opponent is playing multiple hand traps because I encountered them in the previous games, then I would want to play it safe sometimes. Sometimes you don't want to go the most optimal route, because sometimes the most optimal route, going back to World Chalice, is we'll have you in a vulnerable spot. in a sense. And what do I mean by this? Well, if let's say I decide, let me go and put these up real quick so I can show you guys. Now, if I have a hand that looks something like this, let me go ahead and show you. We got this, this, and let's say these three are my opening hand. These are unknown. But all that matters is, this is a prime example. Now, most of the time, you want to just start by opening Venus and drawing 3 off your yugioh, or going into your Skull Deep first, whichever situation you may be in. And so you can put something like this back in the deck, so you can keep your more valuable cards. However, there are certain cases where this may not be the best thing. If you have encountered Effect Veilers Game 1 or Game 2, and all that good stuff, and you still decide to go your most optimal route to save cards in your hand, you know, for the sake of card economy, and you get hit by an Effect Veiler, well, then you're officially stuck. You are stuck, and your turn is officially over because you have no vanilla to start your plays. However, if you know that there are cards to be expected, such as Ciphering Gear Gammas, Effect Veilers, and all that good stuff, if you somehow encounter those said things, sometimes it's good to start with this, especially if you have other extenders in hand like Brutal Fusion to bail you out. However, Ash Blossom is still a card at the same time, so you don't want to necessarily do that either. So instead, if you've encountered hand traps, you want the most effective ways to get around multiple threats without hindering your power cards at the same time. Sometimes it's okay to surrender your power cards if it means getting the value from getting the disruptions out of hand, and if it means you can still get to where you need to go. Sometimes sacrificing your power cards is a good thing, but I want to go show you a quick example of even though I'm sacrificing card economy, it's worth it in the long run if it comes down to making sure my plays can succeed. Now, if I activate Venus's effect and it gets dropped by an Effect Veiler, I now have a normal monster to proceed to start a Link play, and I can go ahead and tribute this off and play World Legacy, link these two, and make an Aurum. Now, if I have seen Ash Game 1 or Game 2, I now have the ability to chain block this World Legacy World Chalice from getting hit by an Ash Blossom by summoning a Guard Dragon straight from the hand, so I can also summon 2 from the deck as well. So at this point, I now have 4 monsters to go into a Skull Dread if I really wanted to. However, I want Skull Dread, or save for later, because I want the Shine Balls out of the deck. I want as much value as humanly possible. Now, as you can see, I only have 1 card in hand at this point in time. Ooh, that was the wrong card to put on the board. So, but this is the awesome thing about this is Venus, you know, if you're sacrificing cards in hand for many cards on field, it's okay. So, you know, of course, Lee is going to go and fetch us a card for purposes such as this. Now, at this point, not only have I ate an Effect Veiler, but I've also chain blocked an Ash Blossom. So that also that contributes to multiple things. 1, I still get my plays off. 2, my opponent has less cards in their hand for me to deal with. Now, I could actually, at this point, now you have to weigh your options. If you have 2 power plays you want, which one will give you the most success? I could play Brilliant Fusion and send a Christia to the graveyard and make a triple Colink Tri-Gate Wizard, or I can go into a Skull Dread, draw 4, and bottom deck 3, and potentially have, you know, not so useful cards and all that stuff. But you know, that's a choice you gotta make. Me personally, I would go for Brilliant Fusion simply because of this situation right here. I know for a fact that I can make a triple colate Trigate with the Crysteel, which should still secure me a game. And so with that being said, I would save this and do my normal plays. I would chain block Ningirsu still, because Ningirsu drawing 3 and not having to put anything back is better than drawing 4 and bottom decking 3. In my personal opinion. It all depends on what you want to do. But I have secured a very good spot and a very good position in a safer manner, other than just going the optimal route and just starting off with a Venus, which could have ended my turn. But looking back now, well, I've not only ate their effect Valor, but my turn also didn't end, and I still got to make some incredible plays. So with this being said, I hope you guys learned something in terms of this. I know I was kind of all over the place today on this video. I just been really into testing for Utah, which is going to be it's going to be in less than a week, so I need to get myself ready. But I also want to help some people out that's not particularly building this deck, but maybe some things that I have said even though I use this deck as an example, there are some points that I pointed out within the first few videos that you can apply to in your own deck. Say, in an Infernoid deck, your win condition is obviously not going to be Archer Christia, Trigate Wizard, and all that good stuff. But we know, playing Infernoids, playing a deck such, your win condition, it will be things like your Deviati to nuke back row, your Nonku to destroy the monsters on the field, Fairy Tale Snow Engrave to control the pace and the tempo of the game, and the fact that a card like Void Feast can put up multiple negates on the board turn 1, so you can slow down your opponent just enough to bounce back the next turn and win the game. Or a deck like Pendulums, your win condition is not necessarily Electromite. Electromite is the enabler. It is in fact your disruptions on the board, that stuns them just enough to where they don't kill you, so you can bounce back on the next turn. Things like that. So yeah, when it comes to any deck, establish a win condition for your deck, build your deck according to said win condition, whatever it may be. Build it in a way to where you have multiple ways, multiple strategies to get to where you need to go. And most competitive decks have that. But for rogue decks, you also need to find more than just one, maybe even 2 ways. Again, the more strategy you have to get to where you need to go, the better. So establish your win condition, build your deck around your win condition, have multiple strategies to achieve win condition, be mindful of disruptions, and take games 1 and games 2, use that knowledge to adjust your play strings for games 2 or 3, depending on how the previous games went, and all that good stuff. And sometimes the most optimal route of your strategy in terms of card economy is not the best strategy based on what happened game 1, game 2, based on what is presently on field. Sometimes the most linear route is not the way to go, but sometimes you want to go you want to take a detour. Sometimes taking a detour is the best, and it can throw your opponent off, and your opponent may not, depending on what deck it is. If it's a deck like Infernoids, everybody knows how a linear play of Infernoids play, but an experienced Infernoid player will have different avenues to get to where they need to go, to where anyone else who has not actually played the Infernoid deck itself will see coming, and they won't know what to stop if an alternate route is being taken. And that's what contributes to a lot of my wins, is because a lot of people know that if this card resolves, you win the duel, and a lot of people know you need to stop this to stop things from happening. But what they don't know is all the alternate routes that I can take to still get to where I need to go, and that's what gives me an incredible advantage. So thank you guys very much for watching this. I'm sorry this was a bit long, but I feel like some of these things that these are things that people, whether you're competitive, casual, budget, actually need to know in terms of strategizing after establishing your win condition and taking, especially certain decks. If you're experienced with certain decks and that so happens to be the matchup you're going into, you can also use that knowledge to your advantage and strategize around their alternate routes, because that is definitely what they plan to take if they know you yourself have disruptions on the board. So let me know what you guys think about this video. This is J Money, and I am signing out.